Welcome, Saners, and welcome back to another episode of Teams, where we just sit and discuss all that's happening in regards to our round 3 matchup against the Essendon Bombers, which will be at Marvel Stadium, which is really exciting. As always, I'm joined by a couple of our Saints fans as well, so I'm going to bring them through, and we're going to discuss all the ins and outs from this week and what we can look forward to going forward. So, welcome, Stephen. Welcome, Sammy, and welcome, Alana. Thank you for joining me. How are we feeling today?
Good.
Good. Perfect. That's what we want to hear. Now, it's crazy to think this time last week we'll all at the MCG as we witnessed probably one of the better wins we've seen for a while from our mob against the Pies. Heading to round 3, big clash against the Bombers. Especially with a few outs that we'll discuss in a second. But one-on-one, what do you guys overall feel around, this way we started the season and, played the first few games?
Yeah, I've been pretty impressed so far. I think we could have definitely easily got the win against Geelong and really, really solid performance last week in a really quality opposition, even though, they haven't started well, but they are last year's premiers. So, and we're renowned for just falling apart in those games. So to do it on the big stage at the G, Danny Frawley's game, couldn't ask for better. And yeah, just to beat Collingwood anytime is great, but in that particular circumstance, yeah, great.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was quite a hostile environment as well. Even though it was a St Kilda home game, it did definitely feel like we were the away team at stages. Sammy, how do you think that, the start of the season, one-on-one, if you had been, looked at the fixture, would you have taken that to start the year?
I probably would have bookmarked 2 losses, to be honest with you. So I'm happy to take 1 win away from it. We're starting off well. We've done well so far, and there's definitely been some improvements made, but I still have concerns about a few things, particularly our midfield and how our forward line works. Our conversion inside 50 is still a little bit of a problem. Because you look at, the teams who are up and about in GWS, Sydney, they're kicking more than 100 points a game. So we need to be kicking a few more goals a game to really be in it to win it. And I think King and Henry is probably going to impact us a bit in terms of scoreboard pressure, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're sort of on the mark there. The other teams are, scoring a lot more than what we are, but also in saying that we're defending a lot better than what other teams are as well. So that's sort of the balance that we're looking at working at. We nearly scored 100 points against the Pies, which is no easy feat, regardless of how they're playing. I think that's still a pretty good outcome. Stephen, I want to sort of get to you in regards to last week. We were challenged in the last quarter. We had a good, reasonable lead, about 30 points after Henry, kicked that on the run on the 45. Collingwood came back. How impressed were you with the response to not only maintain, but, kick another 2 goals and sort of, seal the victory the way we did?
Yeah, I think it's really important for, a young growing team to sort of be under that pressure and then perform under pressure, which is critical. That finals atmosphere, big crowd, we sort of failed in a test against GWS in a final last year. So, the more times that we're exposed to this type of situation, it's only going to hold us in good stead. We saw Collingwood last year with the amount of close fights they were in, that sort of impact that it had on them at the end of the year in all of their close finals, really. So, it was a great response, and it's something that we need to see more of. We were really competitive last year, and it's great to see us being really competitive again. I think our average losing margin was like 20-something points last year, so we're always in games. So it was great to, finish it off.
Yeah, and I think, as you said, always in games last year. This year, I mean, we played Collingwood last year, gather round. We lost by a goal after we were down by 3 or 4. We kicked a couple of ones at the end. But to be able to turn those losses into wins turns the momentum around, especially for the young blokes. I mean, we still got a pretty hefty young list in regards to age-wise. And playing in that sort of crowd, that sort of, stage, Thursday night football, prime time, at the G, I think that's a really good learning curve and experience for them, and they're only going to get better for that going forward as well. So let's have a look. So teams are up. I'm going to bring them up on my screen now for you guys. What was the biggest surprise in relation to the teams that have come out? So we've got King, Henry, and Wood out. I think they were all expected. King with the suspension, and Henry and Wood with lengthy stints on the sidelines through injuries. But in relation to the ins, we've got Caminiti coming back in for his first game of the year. Dan Butler is back to add to that small forward sort of rotating roster that we've got down there, to add a bit of pace and a bit of flair. And we've got a debutant in Hasty as well, who was drafted last year, which we'll touch on in a second. But just overall general thoughts on how the team's looking for this weekend.
Yeah, we're certainly, I think, oh, sorry. We're certainly going to have our challenges, I think, up forward. As Sam sort of mentioned, where these goals are going to come from, with King having a really strong start to the year. Hasty was a big shock. Didn't really expect that one to be coming when the notification came through. So I think he probably plays as sub. I'm not sure, maybe between him and Jones, maybe still a bit underdone at the moment. But yeah, really keen to sort of see how the forward line structures without Big Kingy down there, and whether we can, get enough goals on the board to be really competitive.
Yeah, and I mean, last week, Alana was here. We touched on Zach Jones's role a little bit. I thought he actually did a really good sort of role once he came into the game. He was probably injected a little bit early to what Ross would have liked. But he looked controlled in the midfield. He looked, not at his absolute best, but a lot better than probably what we've seen. How do you see the midfield shaping up against the Bombers this week, Alana?
I was happy with Zach Jones's game, and as I said, he's like my dream sub player. So I think I'd want to keep him as sub. And Hasty coming in, I hate debutants as the sub. So I absolutely loved Windhanger's game. I think that he was pretty much the difference. He was just what we were looking for. I think we all sort of were hoping he could shut down Dacos, and I don't know that he had that role exactly, but he definitely, every time he manned up on him, he definitely had his measure. So that was really great, and he actually got a lot of his own centre clearances. So if he can back that up, that goes a long way to us winning. I think Essendon have quite a strong midfield, particularly Merritt. I think he's quite underrated. He just never has a bad game, and his disposal's really good. I think last year Crouch was probably best for us against the Bombers, so I think he is a loss. But in saying that, we didn't have Steele, so I think I'd go with Steele over Crouch. So hopefully Steele can back up last week too. Owens was more solid for us last week too. He was definitely amongst it. I think the sort of game we were hoping he would play, he played. Marshall will be up against it with two ruckmen, but I definitely think he can hold his own. So it's funny, like watching the game last week, I was a bit like, oh yeah, Marshall's doing okay. And then you sort of look at the stats and I'm like, okay, he had a really good game. But I think that just says a lot about my expectation for Marshall now. Like, you're just sort of expecting him to have that dominance. So that says a lot about him, I think. And if he can match it with their two rucks, getting Goldstein in with that big body and obviously Draper. So I think our midfield's still a worry. Like we do need all our players to have their best game to match it with most teams' midfield. But I think if we can bring our best, then we can match it. But yeah, fingers crossed we can get that job done.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I mean, Sammy mentioned at the start that he has concerns in relation to the midfield. Last week we saw a lot of Owens, Windhager, Steele, Philippou was put in there a little bit. Seb Ross did a job on De Goey as well. Is that formula going to work this week against the Bombers, Sam?
I was thinking about this earlier. The one I'm concerned about in the Essendon midfield is Zach Merritt. He is in form. He's looking hot. He's very, very dangerous, and he's very, very damaging. So I think if you put a Windhager on someone like him and sort of nullify his game a bit, you should well have him under wraps. Parrish, who knows how he's going to go coming back from injury or illness or whatever was going on with him. But Merritt is in form, and their midfield is looking really good. Their clearance work is fantastic. They were fantastic against the Swans. They were fantastic against the Hawks. Where the problem for Essendon lies at the moment is they are the third worst team in the competition defensively. They've got more leaks than the Titanic. They just leak goals like there is no tomorrow. And if you're looking at someone's stats, like obviously they got in what's his name, Ben Mackay. Mackay. Zane Cordy has better stats than Ben Mackay at the moment, and we're probably paying Zane Cordy $300K, and they're paying Ben Mackay $800.
That'd probably even be a stretch, I reckon. I think even like looking at last week, Cordy's one-on-one contest work is extremely underrated. And I mean, I used to be someone that would be quite judgmental on him when he was at the Bulldogs. And when we signed him as a free agent, I was like, oh, is that just another depth player? But get the ball out of his hands. I mean, I don't like him kicking at all. But one-on-one contests and taking intercept marks, it just relieves a little bit of pressure for Wilkie in battle.
Yeah, exactly.
And especially against a team like Essendon, that they'll probably send either Draper or Goldstein forward at times. He's going to be able to allow them, those third man ups and intercepts to take on board. I'll just go back to you in a second, but for the people that are watching at home, share us your thoughts as well of how you think the team's looking. Any ins and outs you sort of agree with and disagree with, and we'll definitely discuss that as well. You mentioned their midfield looking quite strong. I have the personal opinion that the Sydney midfield is lacking a little bit at the moment with Callum Mills, Luke Parker, some big-bodied guys, Taylor Adams, who they recruited in the off-season, still in injury and not playing at the moment. So I feel like while they looked good, our midfield dynamic is a little bit different to what the Swans were at the time. So do you agree or disagree with that?
No, I would agree. Obviously, the Swans are missing a few crucial players, but looking at the average over 2 weeks, it's not a small margin by any means. Their clearance work is significantly better. Obviously, they've played Hawthorn, who, it might as well be an open training session at this point in time. They're not amazing by any stretch of the mind. Sydney are obviously missing a few crucial pillars in their midfield, but they've still been good and they've still been solid enough to match, if not surpass, our midfield. And if we can't get on top of players like Merritt and let them roam free, I think that's going to be pretty dangerous because they score really well, the Bombers. Just as much as they leak goals, they equally score very well when it's inside offensive 50.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, there's a comment here from Evan that I want to bring up for you guys. So just, again, backing on that defending and slowing the ball coming to – I do apologise, Sam. I blocked your face a little bit. Not on purpose. But they're not been defending and they're slowing the ball coming to their defensive 50. They are a team that do like to press up. And when they press up, it's not just, the front sort of midfield to the forward line. It's literally everyone. Ben Mackay is pushing up past the halfway point. So is that an area with our leg speed, our sort of kicking abilities through our half-backs even that we can exploit and sort of use on the counter-attack?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think one of the Fox shows this week, I don't know, it was on the couch or AFL 360, they were showing how the Swans sort of just carved them up, just working through their sort of defensive pressure. They're swarming like 5 in a row, just found the inside corridor kick. I think Swans played a lot through the corridor and really exposed them. And with our elite kickers off half back, I think there's a great opportunity. I'm sure we've gone to work on it in really exposing them from our defensive transition. Absolutely.
Couldn't agree more. And I mean, I do the Oppo View every week. And that was something that I highlighted, which is out tomorrow, to suggest, the Naz, Sinclair, Bonner, adding Hasty, who's a good halfback wingman who can really use the ball quite well through the corridor. That's something that I would hope as a coaching staff and scouting report that we look at to sort of, utilize, especially as we hit the forward line, especially with the King out. I just want to grab all your thoughts now. So King out for 1 week with a suspension. They went to the tribunal. Oh, it was a match review panel officer that's handed the 1 week down, went to the tribunal. Do we agree? Do we disagree? What about, sort of thoughts, first initial thoughts on King being suspended there?
Yeah, look, I disagree, but I'm biased. I disagree, but I'm not surprised. I kind of was expecting it. Yeah, I wish he got off because I think he could tear someone like Essendon apart, and I was really looking forward to that. But put that on hold. But I expected it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he looked really well against Collingwood. He was, going for contested marks. He was grabbing at his highest point. But was it an action that he needed to do? It was late in the game. He's made contact to the head. I mean, I have the personal opinion that ideally, is it something that wants to be reported? Probably not. But Stephen, Sam, I do want to hear your thoughts on this one because it is such a big sort of loss for us.
Yeah.
Should he have even done it in the first place?
My answer is no. Players know the rules and the repercussions in place. Obviously, it's a split-second decision, and no one's ever going to make a perfect decision in that sort of moment. But the reality is that a player got sent off the ground because of that action. Now, if we reverse that and that happened to him or one of our players, we'd be up in arms and saying, well, they should get a week or they should get a fine or whatever else. Now, if Finlay Macrae didn't leave the ground or didn't have to leave the ground, and it's fine, he took himself off, he's okay, whatever, but that's really beside the point. The fact is that he had to leave the ground because of that action. I think that 1 week is fair enough. You've got to set a standard, and I won't be mad about it because they've been fairly consistent across the board. I think the thing that's really annoyed fan bases is when there is total inconsistencies, like when Cozzy Pickett launched himself into Bailey Smith and got a slap on the wrist at best. And then you have another player like Paddy Ryder who misses 3 weeks for a bump. Like it used to be a little bit contradictory, but I think it's fair now, and I think that's a fair punishment. 1 week, it's fine. And against the Bombers, at least it's not against Brisbane or someone else.
Yeah, and I mean, as you said, it is against the Bombers. They don't have a massive, tall defensive backline. Kamanides look good in the twos so far this year as well. Is he able to replace King just for even a game or two at times during the year, Stephen? He had a little bit of a breakout year last year, kicked the 20 goals, nearly a goal a game. By the end of it, he did look a little bit spent, fatigue-wise. Is he a pinch hitter that can sort of, do those 1 or 2 games here and there?
Yeah, I think we'll just sort of play his role this week. Not expecting too much, not expecting a big bag or anything like that. But as long as he competes at ground level, I think that's what I really liked about Max King this year, the way that he's improved his ground ball gets and just the way that he's applying pressure. Just haven't seen that from him in the previous years. So as long as Caminiti just applies that pressure, brings it to ground, stops those intercept marks, I think that's what we can sort of ask for him. We've got plenty of dangerous forwards up there. Owen's had some really nice moments last week with some nice marks. Skunk, you always know he's going to snag a couple. Obviously, he goes coming off a great game. The one for me is probably Mateus. I'd love to see him sort of try and kick a couple this week. He's probably one that sort of hasn't done too much to start off the year, and probably an opportunity for him. Maybe getting a bit more forward time and being more of a target. I think he's probably the one that could probably rise to the occasion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Mateus has probably been in a little bit of not a no man's land, but just sort of floated around in different positions at the moment. I guess the beauty of that is he's versatile. He can play, inside mid. He can play half forward. You can even put him, full forward for a stint as well. I'm just going to bring up a comment here because I think we'll have conflicting opinions here. Again, Sam, I do apologise. Just blocking you out. But Al was saying, need a massive game from Hammer and Owens to help Marshall control Goldstein and Draper. Alani, you touched earlier that they've got two. Individually, I don't think they're amazing ruckmen. Goldstein used to be back in the day. He's quite old now. Draper's got flares, but together they do combine to be quite a tough task. Who would you like to see as the backup ruck? Is it Owens or is it Hammer to allow Owens to then be that midfielder?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I say, why don't we have both? Both could potentially pinch hit at times. I don't see why not. I personally don't love Owens rucking, but I can see why we do it because he's so good at ground level. But I wouldn't waste him in the ruck. I just want him as a pure midfielder, but that's just me. I know Caminiti can pinch hit in there, and I'd probably be happy to. If I was going to choose, maybe we'll say Caminiti just based off that reason, that if it means Owens can just play there more permanently and then Caminiti pinch hit. But I know we like to pinch hit Owens. I think Caminiti has in the past too, but if I have to pick one, I'll say Caminiti.
Yeah, perfect. And I mean, Owens is too good to be jumping up for rucks. I wouldn't mind him being that forward ruck where he can use his body because he's not having, a big 200-centimeter lad jumping into his throat and sticking their knees into his ribs. So up forward, I think it works fine. But I think he was a massive game changer against the Pies, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but he played predominantly in the second half up the ground rather than in the forward line. And in the third quarter, I think he had 5 contested possessions, 9 disposals, and a couple of clearances. And his work with Windy definitely helped sort of turn the game, get it back on our terms, and sort of give us first use going forward. So I think his ideal position, and we say it every week, is that midfield. Don't play him half forward. Let's just get him into the guts as a pure mid, especially with Crouch going out with, another surgery. He's out for another 6 weeks. Just get him in there, get him right there, ready to go. Even put the task on, say, look, you stick with Merritt. You limit his possessions, but, you dominate that midfield. And I think we'll see another performance like, Windy had a breakout game last week in relation to that.
Yeah, I like your idea of Owens doing the ruck work if he's forward. Yeah, that makes more sense to me. And then, free him up to just play midfield 100%. I'm actually surprised we've gone with Filippo so consistently in the midfield when we've got an Owens, because I agree, he was just amongst it so much last week when he got thrown in there. He was involved in everything. And that was more carrying on from where we saw him last year. So, to me, it's a no-brainer, but I'm not the coach.
But I think Filippo's a better set shot than Mitch Owens anyway.
Yeah.
Mitch is great, don't get me wrong, but Filippo's kick is it's so beautiful.
Textbook, yeah.
And I feel like Owens can be that player that's the link-up player. So when the ball's coming out and, we need a good contested mark one-on-one, and then it allows the likes of Naz, Hill, Bonner, half the team pretty much to run around and grab their hands. Because in all honesty, his field kicking, goal kicking is horrible, but field kicking is probably not that much better anyway. So if he can get the body work and the grunt of the possession and then allow the runners to get around and then deliver it to King and Membry, Sharman, I feel like that's what worked well against the Pies, and it will work well going forward for the rest of the year if they can continue to do that.
Yeah, great.
Let's have a look. So we've got some big ins, as I said. Question mark around 2 potential debutants that could have been picked this week. Thomas has suggested like to see Schoenmaker in for Cordy. I'm not too sure Schoenmaker is a one-on-one defender though. I think he's more. I'd like to see Schoenmaker on the wing, to be perfectly honest, in that Mason Wood role. I don't think he's got the engine for it just yet. But Stephen, did you see much of Schoenmaker's game last week? He played against North in the preseason as well. What do you think his chances are for a debut soon?
Yeah, I certainly saw his game in the preseason. Haven't seen last week's game in the VFL, but certainly seen his numbers. So obviously he's finding a stack of the footy in the VFL. When he played that game against North, obviously there's a lot of talk about his kick and how big his kick is, but I think it was mainly around his sort of just decision making with his disposal. So I'd be interested to see, efficiency, what's he doing with his disposals in the VFL and what sort of aspect of his game is he working on there, because he's obviously got an ability to find the ball, which is great, and sort of at rubbing there, sort of get a bit of an idea of his size, and he certainly is a big boy, but I think he's probably got to wait for an opportunity. I don't think, Dougal Howard, Zane Cordy and Carl Wilkie, they're probably the 3 locks, whoever's available out of those 3 to play on the big Bulls. So he's probably waiting for an opportunity for like a Naz or a Bonner or Battle or one of those types to maybe get injured to sort of see his chance to come into the team, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he did have a little bit of indiscretions last year with his I know it's not the TAC, I think it's the Coates Higher League now, in regards to some of his behavioural issues as well. So is that something that the coaches can use to sort of go, okay, well, we're not going to just hand it to you. We actually want to see you, put head down, bum up, see you perform consistently for, a month or a month and a half before we sort of give you that reward of a debut?
Yeah, I think there was an incident in the pre-season. I think he missed maybe it was a training or something. Because I know it was a bit of a surprise to see him play in that North Melbourne game because there was some form of indiscretion, I think, a couple of weeks prior. So it was even a bit of a surprise to see him play in that game. So, yeah, I think there's that side of thing as well, which I'm sure within the four walls of the club, they've certainly got some goals and aims there to work towards before earning that spot.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's a really good sign of the maturity of our club now. To sort of have that mentality to go, okay, we're not just going to hand games to you just because you slid a bit or you had one good performance. We want to see you back it up consistently and really earn the stripes. So just basis on again what we can see on that team list, are we confident that that's enough to be able to bring the heat on Saturday to get the 4 points?
Yeah. I'm confident.
That didn't sound
Quietly.
confident. Yeah. I mean, it's still hard. It is still early in the season. Sort of still trying to work out what teams are doing, how they're going to play. I mean, Sammy touched on it earlier. The midfield for the Bombers are quite good at the moment. Their form is suggesting that, but the way we like to play, turnover ratio to get the opposition to hand us the ball effectively, and then burn it on the other end. I think something that we can definitely look forward to, and it'd be good to see the likes of Wilson, Naz, Hasty, which I'm going to touch on in a second as well. Those quick runners under the roof. I think that's something that we can really see or look forward to seeing them dominate under the lights of Marvel.
Yeah, I think it's important. I think I even said this last week with the Collingwood game to get going early because I think once Essendon get going, they can look bloody good. They're a very good team when they get going and they play their game. So if we can play our game and really slow them down defensively and then hurt them on the turnover, which we're really good at, and again, I think it comes down to having that kicking efficiency in front of goal, like scoreboard pressure. Same thing as Collingwood. They're going to have the crowd behind them. I think general admin sold out, so another big game. If we can just bring it, and even after last week with Essendon's big, bit Brad Scott-esque come out and hurt the opposition, didn't work for them. So I'm going to hope that we give it back to them and we don't let them get under our skin or in our heads. And if we start well and get them on the scoreboard, I reckon we'll be tough to beat. But yeah, let's not get Stringer going either because I can't stand it when he gets going.
No, absolutely. I like how you touched on the physical aspect as well. And I think that's something that we as a team probably haven't done that much of over the recent years. I mean, there was an instance last week where Darcy Moore turned it over and Brad Hill kicked the goal. For me personally, I'd love for Jack Higgins and Dan Butler this week to get into him a little bit and say, look what you've just done. You just cost your team a goal. You're the captain, you're the leader. Get a little bit of argy-bargy. Ben Long used to do it when he was with us, but he always used to give away a 50-meter penalty when he did it. So you've got to do it. You've got to do it within sort of the legalities of it. But there's nothing wrong with doing that. Just get into their face, show them you're there for the fight. And at the end of the day, once you cross the white line, you're there to win the 4 points. So I didn't mind it from Essendon. Is it something that we can deal with and sort of match them with them going forward though? Is that something that we can do it on our end to elevate us?
I think it comes with confidence. I think if we get a few more wins under our belt, we'll get that belief and we'll start our chests start pumping and, we walk around with a bit more arrogance and we start dishing it. I think when we haven't had the success to back it up, you kind of look a bit like Essendon, a bit stupid, like let's walk the walk first. Whereas when a Collingwood or back in the day, Brisbane used to do it and you used to be really intimidated and almost scared to come up against Brisbane. And I don't think we're there yet. But I think if we can get a few wins, then you can back it up and you don't look like idiots, essentially. Then I'm all for and I don't mind a bit of arsiness either. So I loved Higgins with that arsey goal to pretty much seal it. Like there's nothing better than that. So yeah, that's all.
Sammy, Stephen, do you want to chime in with your thoughts on that one as well?
Yeah, no, I agree. And if you look at it from the outset, we've just come off beating the reigning premiers. And Essendon have just embarrassed themselves up at the SCG. So two very different dynamics. But I think that that physical Essendon edge, big play yard bully thing might get under the skin of some younger kids. because it's pretty in your face. So I watched some of that Sydney game last week. It's very, very in your face. But we have to match that and control the ball, take our time, because they love to run and gun. They really do. So if we can control the game, keep it on our terms, exploit, their defensive 50, I think we've got a fair chance to win it. And obviously get on top of their midfield, because their midfield is relatively speaking strong.
Yeah, and it's certainly been a big media talking point as well this week. A few words around about the fake toughness with some of those, shoulders and elbows getting thrown by the Bombers players in that game. So I think it'll be really interesting to see how they go about things. We certainly do a younger group. And they probably haven't been exposed to that. But as long as you fly your flag for your teammate, but at the end of the day, the footy comes first, and if you get your head over the ball and kick the goals and make it count on the scoreboard, that's where, at the end of the day, that's what matters, no matter how many bumps and bruises you lay on your opponent.
Yes, I mean, scoreboard pressure, and that was something that we were able to do last week quite well, I thought, when we had the game in our hands and we had the terms of the way we wanted to play and control. We're able to put that on the scoreboard quite quickly, and turn the game around. It was a very momentum game in saying that, but when you dominate, you've got to put it on the scoreboard. You mentioned there, Stephen, a lot of youngsters that might be a little bit, what's the word? Probably not intimidated a little bit with that physical sort of touch. And I do just want to highlight, the youngsters that we do have are, I think that our draft classes over the last couple of years have been absolutely top notch. I'm comfortable with them trading whatever they want to do and picking whoever they want going forward for the next couple of years, because they've really hit the mark lately. And as Alexander said, it is good to see some youngsters in. I just want to touch on Hasty a little bit, especially for those that aren't familiar with his game. He was only, picked last year, 6 months ago in the draft. So I want to sort of give people a little bit of an insight into what he can do, what he's going to deliver for us. A lot of comments, and not on our feed at the moment, but through the teams, and when he was announced today as the new debutant, suggesting him as a sub. Before I go into his sort of profile, thoughts on debut subs? Yes or no? Quick fire.
Yes. When years away from winning a premiership, get games into them now. The earlier
but as a sub though, Sam?
As a sub?
Yeah,
I think so. I think so. I don't think I'd be starting them up with a full game or as a rotational bench. I just don't think it would work. They're young, they're kids, they're untested. I think a sub is a good way to go, because that way you can give them a quarter here or there, see how they go. If their body's holding to it, like.
But in that instance, what happens when Mason Wood goes out 10 minutes into the game?
I guess that's just the nature of the beast, hey?
The way the cookie crumbles. Right?
No one's seeing that coming. But like the way I see it is like Angus Hasty's, he's at 185, 186 centimeters. He weighs 70 kgs. If he gets cleaned up by a stringer or a Merritt, he's going to be carried off the field in no time. That's just one of my concerns about playing the kids early on, because they've got to build their bodies. They've got to build themselves as players as well. So I don't think like throwing them in the deep end for a whole game is always the best route to go, unless they're tried and tested, like a Wilson or a Philippou.
Yeah, absolutely. Stephen, you were going to say something then as well?
Yeah, if I was a betting man, I'd probably have Hasty starting sub. That's just I feel like it's sort of just come out of the blue. His Bachelor mentioned in the promo vid that, he just played on the wing on the weekend. He's had a good game. He's been working with Woody, and now he's in there. So it seems, it's all sort of come quite quickly and sort of out of the blue a little bit. So I think they're just going to give him that chance while he's hit that form. And I think Zach Jones will probably come in and be an important role in maybe a midfield rotation side of things. So I just feel like he'll probably play as sub. That's just some of the vibes that I'm getting.
Yeah, I love that we have different opinions, because I'm with Alana on this. I think we saw it with Collard a little bit in Geelong. You're sort of waiting, half a game, 3/4. You're sort of itching to get out there. At least if you start from the start, get him into the contest straight away and say, this is AFL football, deal with it, or you're going to get exposed. And a lot of these young kids are coming through quite, pride, relations. They want to be, looking their best and playing their best at the same time. So you don't want to be shirking the ball. You don't want to be hesitant. Don't want to be nervous. You want them to get full guns blazing from the start. And I think him playing on the wing, and then it still allows Jones to be that little bit of a grunt, sort of midfield in the back half of the game, 2.5, 3 quarters in. I personally would pick Jones, but that's just me. And I'm glad we do have differing opinions there. So just a little bit on Hasty. There's a comment from John. I'm just going to bring that up quickly. Hasty is quick. Absolutely right. He's got his athleticism, and I think we've been showing that so far with our, debutants, and our drafting method is let's target someone quick. Let's target someone athletic. The skills will come after that, but let's get someone who's ready to run out a game. He was a Geelong Falcon product last year in the Coates League. Picked 33 from last year's draft. Originally drafted as a medium defender, which I think we sort of needed as well. A little bit more depth. But as you said, Stephen, played last week for Sandy along the wing. His strengths coming through the draft, and sort of the reason why we picked him, cutting through the midfield, cutting through the corridor, and making sure that we can, get the ball going forward, which I think is a really, really, just an extra layer of what we have. Can that work? Again, we've already got Naz, we've got Sinclair, we've got Bonner, Brad Hill, Liam Henry when he's fit. Can another one come in and work that way?
I think he fits in terms of, we're obviously going for speed as our weapon. Like that's pretty much what we want our game to be. To be honest, I was that sure that Schoenmaker was going to debut that I had to do a double take on the video they released of Ari, Hasty getting the call up. Because I was just that sure it was going to be Schoenmaker, and I was like, hang on, that's not Ari. So I was completely shocked. So but having listened to that and understanding that he did play wing over the weekend, and he'd based his game sort of on Wood, I got a bit more of an understanding. And if he's going to bring that speed, maybe he can sort of help out a bit with the loss of Henry, which is a huge loss too. So I know Henry plays sort of more wing forward, but maybe that's sort of another rotation we can throw in the mix. I'm not sure. Not that he's going to play forward, but just like another sort of rotation, with your Hill, and I think Burns will play wing as well this week, judging by what and how he went last week.
And just with that, like last year when he played for Geelong Falcons, he was like a halfback wing, sort of like what Mason Wood does. So I think that's why it's sort of like a like-to-like replacement. Experience-wise, not so much, but from a performance aspect, he does like to get back. I think he averaged about 8 intercept possessions in that sort of Coates Hire League last year, which is a phenomenal number playing as a wingman, which shows his two-way ability. Again, I think Ari was probably a little bit stiff. I just want to again saw your other thoughts. Can Ari play as a wing? We saw him against North Melbourne, but does he have the engine to sort of be that Mason Wood? We need to find someone for the next 5-6 weeks. Can he do it?
No, he doesn't have the speed. And he's not. He's okay with ball in hand. Okay at best. Like he gets all of the ball, and it's great, and he's a good defender. But in terms of his speed and his ball use, I just don't think it's there yet.
Especially as a wingman, you want him to be sort of accelerating, burst from the pack along the wings, to be able to get first use for the forwards. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think it's something that he could develop into, but maybe at the moment I'm probably expecting just a little bit too much, and trying to sort of find that replacement. So last week we sort of brought in a segment under the microscope. We sort of referred it to someone that may be at threat of losing their spot. I just want to change it up a little bit. And again, for people that are watching at home, share your thoughts of who the spotlight's on a little bit this week. Now, it doesn't have to be someone necessarily that is at threat of losing their spot, but someone who you might have a game that's really highlighted. For me, I think Rowan Marshall fits that bill this week in regards to, again, two really strong individual ruckmen. tough task to handle all by himself. I want to get your guys' opinions on this week, who could be in that little bit of spotlight view.
Yeah, for me, it's sort of mentioned him earlier, would be Mateus up forward. We've certainly seen some good glimpses of him throughout last year. But this year, I think this week could be his week to sort of put a couple of goals on the board, get some confidence going. So I'm certainly keen to see how he goes up forward this week and hopefully get a couple of goals on the board.
I was going to go a bit left field, and obviously we've only just brought him in, but just speaking about if he could pinch hit in the ruck, like Caminiti, if he could come in, and I think everyone's just expecting him to come in for a week, play a role, see you later, back to the twos. If he could come in, play this sort of backup ruck role, swing forward and actually snag a couple of goals and really give our selectors something to think about, I think he's one to watch. He had a really solid season last year in his debut season. So I'd love to see him come out and not just be that, yep, thank you for, playing your role for the week. That's it, job done. No, come in and let's solidify your spot in the team and make us think.
Yeah, and I think he's really up for that third tall with Sharman as well. So what better chance to come in and sort of really solidify his spot. For you personally, Alana, what's a pass mark for in this game in terms of, stat-wise that can sort of get him another spot to gather around next week?
Oh, if he could get it's really hard because it depends on where he plays. Like if he just plays forward and doesn't pinch hit, do you take your 10 touches and 2 goals? He needs to hit the scoreboard for me. He needs to definitely 2 at least. If he could, pinch hit, maybe get more, say like your 15 touches and 3 goals. That's pretty awesome for a first game for the season, I would think. But my expectation isn't that high, to be honest. That's why I'm sort of saying if he could achieve that, that's
but, no, absolutely. So I've just seen a comment from John here just before we get to you, Sam. Pooh is due for a big game, and I couldn't agree more. I think he showed a little bit of glimpses. He kicked a nice snap from 60 out last week, but under the roof of marble, I reckon he's due for a big one. Even it doesn't have to be a 30 disposal game, 15 disposals, 2 or 3 goals to sort of announce his sort of stage for this year. I think it will be a really good performance. Sammy, who's under the microscope for you this week?
I'm going to go with the old guard. I'm pretty happy with the new kids. I think they'll be fine. But Dan Butler, I want to see him do some stuff. He's a good player. He has some speed, and I think against a pretty average backline, there's a lot of traffic cones down there. I think he's up for a good game. He's due a big game. And I'm expecting big things from him. He needs to have one because he's sort of getting pushed to the outer at the moment. That's just my opinion.
No, absolutely. And I mean, Alana and Stevie, you can either agree or disagree, but I do like where you're going with it. You've got Henry who's come in. Darcy Wilson's really solidified himself so far this year. You've got Jack Higgins who had a really good game. He's probably a number 1 small forward at the moment. So the pressure is on Butler. 2-3 years ago, he had a permanent spot in the 22. Now he really needs to fight for it. And again, what better way, first game for the year, to come out and show us what he's got.
I think it creates competitiveness amongst players, which I think is a good thing. If you have to fight for your spot, you're not guaranteed a position in the best 22. I think that's a good thing because it's going to make people work harder. And he's going to have to work hard because as soon as people come back from injuries, he might fall to the back of the pecking order if he doesn't do something nice on the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in relation to that, something nice doesn't have to be something fancy. He doesn't. No. I feel like Butler sometimes can get a little bit carried away and do some handballs over the back or whatever the case may be. Just do the basics right, and he's good for 2 goals a game. That's all we need. 2 goals a game, 5-6 tackles inside 50s. That's all. That's his job. He does that. That's the recipe for success for our forward line.
Yeah.
Now, just going to bring up a comment from Thomas. Actually, I'm going to do John first because I think there was a few comments last week in relation to Jack Hayes. Would Jack Hayes come into the wing spot when he gets back? I don't think he plays a wingman. I think John, he would go into that forward line. But he's probably the ideal second ruck for Roland Marshall. What do you guys think?
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly agree with that. Yeah, I can't really see him being a wingman. But I think he's probably waiting for his opportunity, like a Caminiti spot and Jack Hayes when he's up and fit and firing. I think they'll be certainly fighting out for an opportunity and be waiting wings. And that's exactly what we want. As Sam just mentioned, competition for spots, and he would be certainly knocking on the door waiting for his chance.
Yeah.
And
I was going to say, I don't think he's an ideal wingman. I think, hopefully he could pinch it in the ruck. But I'm a little bit worried about Hayes. I don't want him to be another Nathan Freeman. I'm not convinced he's going to get back on the park. But fingers crossed he does, because I do really think he's a bit of a weapon. And he's got that sort of mature age now too, which I think would really balance our side too. So really fingers crossed for him, he can get back out there. But yeah,
I'm not sold on him either. I should say, I'm just not sold on him. He had one really good game and then a lot of okay games. And I think he's behind a lot of players. I wouldn't put him ahead of a Caminiti. I wouldn't put him ahead of even a Cordy, really.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, I'll just bring it up. John's just mentioned that, he would need a few weeks in the twos just to sort of, get that match fitness up. And I think, again, it just adds more spots for competition, more, reasons for other players to perform on a consistent basis. So that way we can make sure as we head into, the bigger parts of the year where we need our best team and our, players fit and firing, and making sure that everyone's all up to it. Interesting comment here from Thomas, just before we round out. I think this is Ross last year. I'm assuming he's referring to Seb Ross and not Ross Lyon. I hope so.
I read that as Ross Lyon.
You can clarify that through the comments, Thomas. But I thought he did an actually really good job against Degoe last week. He sort of did a tagging role or run with role, but was also able to sort of get his ball on the inside as well. Is this the 2024, the last year of Seb?
No, I think you've got to keep these players around. We have too many young kids coming through. You've got to keep some veterans around, and he's one of them. He's been around for too long. He's guided us through some really, really tumultuous years. I think it's of more benefit to keep him around on like a year contract, 150, 200K, just to share his experience, even if he doesn't play that many games, just to share his experience with the younger folks, because I think that helps a lot in building a team. You don't want to be like a Hawthorn.
Yeah. And at the moment, I think he's really important in that on-field leadership space as well. Obviously, we've got Steele. He certainly leads with his actions and he's getting better with his voice. But I think Seb Ross is probably one of the real key voices on the field. You see him directing traffic around and really vocal. So I think he's really important in that aspect of the game as well.
Yeah, I find it refreshing we're all on the same page with this, actually, because I'm used to him being a bit of a whipping boy, whereas I've always been a bit of a Seb fan, because I think he's just a bit underrated. Like, yeah, he's never going to win a Brownlow, but he's been a pretty solid contributor for us over his career. So I think he deserves a little bit more credit than what he gets. I think people used to say he used to just bomb the ball a bit and, just about getting the quick entry in and he kicks to no one. But he does a lot of other, I think, take the good with the bad with Seb, and he brings a lot to our team, and I'd hope he sticks around for more than this year.
Yeah, and I think that was a coaching directive that sort of threw him under the bus a little bit. That was when Brett Ratton was coach, and before that was Richardson as well, that they wanted him to be sort of like the Brad Hill, to be delivering the ball inside 50, which he just didn't. He was never that sort of player. So, I mean, as John mentions here, he brings value, brings veteran leadership, and especially with Crouch being injured, even if you just manage him, give him a rest once every 5-6 weeks, depending on how his body's feeling, I would definitely keep him tagging along. Just before we finish up, I just want to get some quick fire thoughts. So we know Essendon's midfield's been good. Windhager and Ross, who would you send them to for the first bounce Saturday?
Yeah, it's probably, I think, mentioned earlier, Merritt, and obviously Parrish back in the team is obviously key to balls out to the likes of Merritt. So I think they're probably the two key mids that they'll probably go to.
Who would you send to each one though, Stephen? If you were Ross on Saturday 4:30, just before the bounce, you're going up to Windy, and who are you saying he's going to?
I'll probably go Windy to Parrish. They're both sort of bulls with a contested type of footy. And we saw Rosh a bit of vision during the week on Degoe, really good on that running type. So that's probably more suited to Merritt, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, that would be my personal opinion. Jack Steele, do you keep him as, and I'm just going to bring it up because John's mentioned it, do you keep him as a lone midfield, or do you give him a little bit of a tagging role? Archie Perkins has been pretty good for the Bombers this year. Nick Martin off halfback and through the midfield as well. Thoughts on Steely and sending where he goes?
He's too good to be a tagger. He's far too good to be a tagger. Same with Windy. That shouldn't be their primary role. They're far too talented for that. It's sort of like saying, oh, well, you're not good enough with ball in hand, so just make sure this guy doesn't get the ball. That's essentially what it's saying. The tagging role can be saved for the Finn McGuinnesses of the competition, which they are not. So I don't think they should be solely tagging roles or really tagging roles at all for either of them. They're too good.
I do see where you're going with that, because tagging is sort of a concept that's fallen out with the competition. It's a term that not many teams use, but in regards to a contest and an accountability point of view, do you say, look at the contest, this is who you go to, or are you just saying, look, stay in the midfield, win the ball, be a bull, and then get us the ball going forward?
Yeah, I think it's definitely that matchup around contests. You certainly don't go out there and just follow a bloke around like maybe in the past. It's more just accountability around contests, making sure you got someone accountable for Parrish every time, and I think Windhager definitely would be suited to that best. But yeah, once he gets the ball, because he can win it, he's so dangerous with ball in hand. He's got a great step on him and can break away from contests as well.
Yeah,
well, I think it's prioritising tasks as well. Like, their job is to win the ball and clear it from the centre. Their second job should be, if Merritt gets it, if Parrish gets it, hunt them down and make sure they do not get any further.
Yeah, which is what I think Seb's capable of doing. I don't know if I've got a bit of an echo happening for me at the moment, so sorry.
You're good.
I'd have Seb on Merritt for me, because I think just at his point in his career, and I sort of agree with the points about not sacrificing your game. And he did such a good job on Degoe that I think you don't want Merritt getting 30 touches. So I think Seb needs to be on Merritt. But aside from that, I wouldn't really be worrying too much. I think we have touched on Essendon having a good midfield, but I'm sort of sick of worrying about other teams' midfields. Like, what can we bring? Let's make them worry about us for a change, is sort of where I'm hoping we can show a bit like we did last week with Windhager coming out. And like I said earlier, he sort of played on Dacos, but I don't think he tagged him. They sort of just matched up on each other, ran with each other. But Windhager just won that on his own. Like, it wasn't like he shut him down and didn't have an impact. He was one of our best players. So
yeah, no, absolutely. And just to finalise or wrap this all up, so Thomas been commenting quite a bit, but see ball, get ball, make them follow us. And I think that just sort of reiterates your point, Alana. Let's just focus on what we can control, and get the ball going forward, get the first use to our forward line, and then from there we can put scoreboard pressure and hopefully get the win. So just want to grab you guys' last final thoughts. Saturday, as I mentioned, Marvel Stadium. What's our sort of verdict of how the game will go and then who will win?
I reckon it's going to be high scoring. I think it's going to be a shootout. Just Essendon seem to be playing like that. Teams seem to be playing like that against Essendon. I'll back us in, but not by much. I reckon it's going to be under 3 goals.
Yeah, I think that puts us a similar game to last year, really. I think, it was a pretty hot contest, and I think we got on top. Yeah, ended up winning by 3 goals or something in the end, I think. I I think we are stronger defensively, so I think we can stop them scoring as well. So, if we can get them under 100, I think we're capable of doing that. And then I think we're capable of scoring over 100, if that makes sense. So, yeah, if we can shut them down defensively, then that wins us the game.
Sorry. A similar margin sort of what's been said there. I reckon 3 or 4 goals, definitely around the target. I think, our focus will be under 100 to try and hold them. So they've scored over 100. They've been pretty high scoring. So I think defense will be massive for us this week, and will be critical for us getting the win.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to double down on it. I think we can keep them under 80. And I know they've been high scoring. They've tried to go through it and sort of put scoreboard pressure on. But I think our defense is good enough to keep that score under 80. If they do that, then I'd be extremely surprised if we don't walk out with a 3-4 goal win and the 4 points in the bag, which would be a really good start to the year, 2-1 as we head into gather round. So some really exciting times. Exciting game ahead, Saturday afternoon, Saturday twilight at Marvel Stadium. I just want to thank you three for joining me. So thank you, Stephen, Alana, and Sam. It's been a pleasure. Thanks to the guys that have been watching at home as well and commenting. We'll be back next Thursday night. Time to be confirmed, but as we preview gather round as well. If you're able to get down to Marvel on Saturday, get on to the boys and give them a bit of a cheer. And as always, go Saints.
Go Saints.
Thank you. Go Saints.